we have our JS file here, but the JS file is not yet linked to our HTML element. So we say if you want to link the JS file to your HTML element, you do it at the very bottom here of your HTML document, just before the body tag, or you use it, you link your JS in the head of your HTML document, and then use the defer keyword. Okay, so let me do the latter. I'm going to use script over here. So script src is equal to app.js because, as you can see, my HTML here, my HTML is in the same directory level of the JS file. So script src is equal to app.js, and because I don't want this to block my HTML document from being loaded, I want to provide here the defer keyword like that. So if you use the script tag, if you link your JS file in the end of your HTML document, you use this script tag over here. And if you, sorry, not the script tag, but you use this defer keyword. Whenever you're linking your JS document into your HTML document using the head, you make sure you use the defer keyword. And if you are linking it from the bottom here, then you don't need that particular defer keyword. Okay, so first things first. Yes. Yeah. So the defer keyword is used to tell the browser to wait until the whole document has been loaded for it to execute the JavaScript. Because we say when the browser is trying to display your HTML document, it's going to do this line by line. First line, second line, third line. But when it comes across JavaScript, it will stop that process until all the JavaScript has been executed. Okay? It will stop that process until all the JavaScript has been executed. Okay? And sometimes that makes the page to load very slowly, because you can imagine if you have very complex JavaScript in your app.js, and now your HTML is stopping at this point, the user will be there waiting and waiting for the page to load and load and load and all of that. So we say to prevent that from happening, you put your script, you link the JavaScript at the very bottom of your page here. Okay, that way it is loaded and executed after everything has been executed, or after everything has been printed to the browser, or you use it and then you put the defer keyword, of which the defer keyword will tell the browser to wait for the entire HTML document to be loaded for it to be executed. So that is the work of the defer keyword. Are we together? Yeah, so this defer keyword will tell the browser, hey, wait until all the HTML has been printed to the browser. Only then should you execute the script that you have here in the app.js. Otherwise, if you don't want to use the defer keyword, just link your script at the very bottom here before the closing body tag. Okay, that is basically to optimize the loading of your script. Now, first things first, I want us to look at what happens here. When I click on this new game button, okay, when I click on this new game button, okay, I want us to notice what happens here. When I click on this new game button, you will see everything that will happen. When we click on that new game button, we get this message here. So secret number generated, try to see if you can guess the number. So let us write that somewhere. So when the new game button is clicked, new game BTN clicked. So when it is clicked, what we want to do, we want to show. Okay, somebody wants to join. I should put in the topic and not show. Right? Only is it only or? Okay, let me share my screen again then. I'm sharing my screen. This is the very first time we're having issues with it. It has never happened that way. Can you see my screen? Okay, let us continue then. In case your screen is hanging and your neighbor's screen is working, or rather your neighbor's meeting is working, you can try to use your neighbors instead of suffering. Of course, I believe I'm audible to the entire room. So yeah. So what I was saying was this: when you click on this new game button, you can see you get this message over here. Secret number generated. Try to see if you can guess the number. So show the message secret number generated, try to see if you can guess the number. So you want to show that message, and then you also want to show the number of trials. So when you click on this new game button, you want to set the number of trials to 10. Okay, so set number of trials to 10 and show 10 trials remaining. And then also, when we click on that new game button, when we click on this new game button, we want to enable this input. You can see for now it is read only. If I try to click on it, I can't do anything. Okay? For now it is read only. But when we click on new game, the input should be enabled. So you can see here we also want to enable the input. And then once, sorry, not once, but last but not least, when this new game button is pressed, we want this yes button here to be enabled. Okay, so enable the yes button. So very simple and very straightforward. And now, remember we saying if you want to work with the HTML element inside of the JavaScript code, you need to start by selecting that particular element. Okay, so when you want to work with any HTML element in your JavaScript, you start by selecting that particular element. So to select an element, we know there are various ways we can do it. So the first element you want to select is this button over here. Okay, it has a class of BTN and then new game BTN. And even this button here, even this button here at the bottom, it has the class of BTN and then guess BTN. So there are many ways you could select this particular element over here. Sorry, not this one, but this new game button. Okay, we could use document.query selector all of BTN, which will basically give us all the two buttons in our page and then select the first button at index 0. Or we could use document.query selector, which selects the first element and so on and so forth. Okay, so just to make things simple, but to make things simple, I like using the ID to select my elements. To make things simple, I like using ID to select my elements. But for the sake of learning, we'll be switching between using an ID, using query selector, and so on and so forth. So for now, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use query selector to select the new game button element like this. Okay, so let me copy this class, new game button. And then in my app.js, I'm going to say here, document.query selector. Remember we said query selector will select the first element. Okay, it will select the first element that matches the what that matches that particular selector. So document.query selector, and the selector is a class selector, so I will use a dot like that. So document.query selector of this new game BTN, and guess what? It's going to return that particular element. So allow me to set that element to a variable. So I can say here const new game BTN is equal to document.query selector of this class over here, new game button. And just to confirm that that is actually the case, whether it is working, I want to log into the console. So console.log new game BTN. So if I save this and I come back here and refresh it, okay. So let me inspect this to see the console. Yeah, you can see we are able to select that particular button. So button class is equal to BTN and then new game button. So that button, when it is clicked, we want to perform all of these activities. We want to show the message that a secret number has been generated. We want to set the number of trials to 10, okay, and show 10 trials remaining. We want to enable the input. We want to enable the get button. So we have a lot of things to do over here. So we want to attach a click event listener to this particular button. So this new game BTN, okay, we want to add event listener. So new game BTN.add event listener, and the event you want to listen to is the click event. So you want to listen to the click event, and then here is our event handler. So there is our event handler. And then now inside of our event handler, we now want to do all of these things. We want to start by showing the message that a secret number has been generated. Try to see if you can guess the number. So where are we showing that message? We are showing that message in this element here. Where is that element? This game guide element. Okay, so we are showing that particular message in this game guide element or even trials count box. So as you can see, guys, initially it is the same element showing all of this message. New number generated, try to see if you can guess the number, and then 10 trials remaining. But of course, now if you start guessing, okay, it now only shows the it now only shows the what? The number of trials remaining. Okay, so let us do that. I want to start by selecting it. So trials count box. So trials count box, as you can see, it has an ID. So I want to select it using the ID. Okay, so you can see here, const trials count box is equal to document dot get element by ID. So document dot get element by ID, and then the ID here is going to be the ID that you just copied, trials count box. Okay, and then this trials count box is going to have an inner HTML. You can use inner HTML so that we have those elements on their own separate lines. Okay. Let us use text content instead of inner HTML. Let us just use text content. Is that a question? So trials count box text content is equal to this message over here. Secret number generated. Try to see if you can print the number. Okay, copy that, and then you paste it here, like that. So secret number generated, try to see if you can get the number. So if I save that, and then we refresh this, okay, and we click on this new game, you can now see we get here, secret number generated, try to see if you can get the number. Then you also want to show here, whatever number of trials remaining. So let me refresh this and then say here new game. You also want to show here 10 trials remaining. So as you can see, the number of trials keep updating throughout the game. So for now, you can see it is at 9 trials, 8 trials, 7 trials, 6 trials, and so on and so forth. So I want to have a variable for the number of trials. Okay, so here you can say, where is that? I can say here, I can have a variable called number of trials. So let number of trials is equal to 10. And then here I can also show number of trials remaining. So I'm using a variable to avoid hard coding. Okay, so secret number generated, try to see if you can get the number, and then here I'm showing the number of trials remaining. I'm wondering what they're building in this workshop. They can do that for the last okay. So number of trials remaining. So if we save this and we refresh this page, so let me just refresh this page. So new game, you can see secret number generated, try to see if you can get the number, and then you have 10 trials remaining. Of course, this 10 trials remaining, it's supposed to be on a new line. Let me show you. It's supposed to be on a new line like this, but I will show you guys later how we're going to fix that. Okay, I will show you later how we're going to fix that. So the first objective is done and dusted to show that particular message that a secret number has been generated. So objective completed. Yes, we use text content exactly. Because we said inner HTML is for setting inner HTML. Yes. Inner text. So we said text content is more consistent across browsers. Okay, it's more consistent across browsers. Actually, most people prefer using this text content. You want us to use inner text? Okay, it's okay. If you want us to use inner text, it's okay because we're building this together, and we're not even intending to ship it, so it will still be the same thing. But you know that, yeah, it will still be the same thing. But experts usually say that text content is more consistent across browsers as compared to inner text. But if you want us to use this, it's still okay. That's how. Yeah, because I want us to completely work together. So the first objective has been done, okay, to show the message that the number of trials have been set. So that is the first objective. The second objective is to enable the input element. Okay, we want to enable this input over here. So input type is equal to number and so on and so forth. You can see it has the ID of game input. This input element has the ID of game input. So let us select it. So I'm going to copy that class, and then I try to select it here. So const input is equal to document dot get element by ID, because you can see we're using an ID to select it. So const input is equal to document dot get element by ID, and then I specify the ID. So we want to enable this input. You can see right now it's read only. You can see record is read only, but if we want to get rid of that read only attribute, okay? So in HTML, we have these attributes that don't really take up value. Okay, we have such attributes that don't really take up value. For example, read only, it's an attribute that doesn't take any value. And for these attributes, in JavaScript, their presence is equated to true, and their absence is equated to false. So in this case, for example, I can say this input dot read only. Okay, that really what read only is equal to false. Let me see if that is going to work. Okay, if it doesn't work, I will show you the other way of setting attributes. Because there's several ways of setting attributes. So if this doesn't work, I will show you. Yeah, it doesn't work. Let us use the set attribute property. So input of set attribute, and then read only, and then set attribute false. So save that, and then when you refresh this page over here, and you click on new view, okay, this thing doesn't work. That is strange. How can we remove this read only attribute? So input of set attribute. When is it going to work? What this is supposed to work? Just a second ago. Read only. Let's refresh this. New view. Okay, I don't know why that's not. Okay, we'll come back to this one when I remember how to do it. So we'll come back to this input of set attribute. We'll come back to that one. So the final thing we're supposed to do is to enable the gaze button. Okay, so the final thing you want to do is to enable the gaze button. So of course, because we want to work it in our HTML, we need to first start by selecting it. So we want to start by selecting the gaze button. We can use this class over here and then use query selector because it is the only element in this class of gaze button. So copy that class, and then sorry, we can say here const gaze button is equal to document dot query selector of this gaze button. Okay, so const gaze button is equal to document dot query selector gaze button, and then this gaze button we want to remove this attribute here of disabled. We want to set the disabled attribute to be equal to false. Okay, so gaze button, we have something like remove attribute here. Actually, we have remove attribute. This is what I was looking for. Okay, so we also use this for the input. Just remove attribute, and the attribute that you want to remove here is the disabled attribute, like that. So if I save this now and I try to look at it, so refresh that, new game, it's still not removing the attribute. What is wrong with our JavaScript? New game. Come again? Yeah, the spelling of disable is okay. Let me see set attribute disabled false. Just a second, guys. There is something I want to confirm. Why are they not working? Why are these two not working? Okay, let me just ask AI very quickly because I don't want us to waste any time. So why are these two lines not working? I can't really remember. I can't really remember the JavaScript we're supposed to use. Let us see for that. So input with set attribute. I thought set attribute was supposed to work. So input would remove attribute. Okay, let me just see what AI is saying. Because I seem to have forgotten how to do that. We are using the set attribute. The read only and disable attribute and boolean attribute HTML. Setting them to false as string does not remove the attribute. It just sets it to false. Oh, which counts it as present and thus keeps the element disable read only. To enable the input and the button, you should remove the attributes instead. Yeah, but that is what you are doing, and it is not working. So remove attribute disabled. Okay, just a second. Let us see whether we have actually selected the gaze button. Oh yeah, please. I understand what is happening. So document.query selector, we're supposed to specify the class. Okay, we're forgetting this dot over here. You're forgetting this dot because it is a query selector. So document of query selector gave button. Sorry, that was the issue. So that right now it's going to work. If I refresh that and I click on new game, you see now the gaze button has been enabled. Okay, so we have selected the gaze button here. Okay, we have selected the gaze button as you can see. So that gaze button is equal to document of query selector, and we still are supposed to specify for this query selector what selector you are using. So in this case, the selector is a class selector, which is specified using a dot. And then we are removing the disabled attribute to make it enabled. So even in this case, we're supposed to use the remove attribute. Okay. So this input dot remove attribute, and then removing the big only attribute. So if I go back to the page here and refresh it, click on new game, you can now see the input is also enabled. So all of those objectives have been achieved. So what we wanted was that when the new game button is clicked, we wanted to show the user that a secret number has been generated and they should try to see if they can guess it. Okay. After that, we wanted to set the number of trials to 10 and to also show the trials remaining. After doing that, we wanted to enable the input. Okay. And then also wanted to enable the guess button. That is exactly what we're doing here. So you know what I'm saying? For you to work with an element in HTML, you start by selecting it. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So on trials count box is equal to document of guess element by ID, trials count box, and then we are showing the inner text there that a secret number can be generated, try to see if you can guess the number, and then you're also showing here the number of trials that are remaining. And then after that, we want to enable the input. So const input is equal to document of guess element by ID, game input, and then to enable it, we are simply removing the if only attribute. So input will remove attribute, and then this read only attribute. And then also after that, we want to enable the guess button. Okay, we also want to enable the guess button, which for that we're just removing the attribute called disable, and as you can see, it works perfectly fine. So I can do the taking that of that workshop. What is it that building up until now? They're almost doing it on a daily basis. This is so exactly what is talking, we just know what to do. So yeah, that button is working and it's working perfectly fine. So if I refresh this and I click on new game, you see this is working exactly as we intended it to. Now the next thing that I want us to do is that when we click on this guess button, okay, basically these things are supposed to happen. Number one, we need to know what the user has filled in this particular input, of which we're going to do that. It's very simple. Okay, we need to understand what the user has filled in this input. So we read that particular value, and then once we read that particular value, we compare it with a secret number which only we know. Okay, so we compare it with a secret number which only the game knows, and if the number is too huge, we show it in this element that is of course hidden here for now. If the number is too high, we still do the same. So first things first is that when this guess button is clicked, let us start by reading what the user has typed. So if the user has typed here 55, for example, when they click on guess, we want to see this particular value over here. And friends, I want you to be very careful because there's a new concept I'm about to introduce here. Okay, so let us do just that. And that particular guess button, as you can see here, it is. So guess btn is equal to document with query selector of this guess button. So this guess button, okay, this guess button, we want to add an event listener to it, and that event listener is the click event listener. So when you click on this button, we want this particular function over here to be executed. And for now, just to see whether this is working, I want to alert button clicked. I just want to see whether this is working, and that is why I'm alerting here, button clicked. So going back to the page here and refreshing it, so new game, and when I click on guess here, you can see it is not working. New game, when I click on guess, of course, it is a button inside of a home, it is refreshing the page. We're coming back to that discussion in a short while. But as you can see, I'm not getting this message over here that button is working. Why is that the case? We have just done that in the afternoon. As you can see, the button is inside of this block over here. sorry, the button is inside of this block over here. So it is a block scope variable, which means I cannot access it outside of, that particular block. So if I want to access it outside of that particular block, I should make it to be a global scope variable. Okay. So what I'm supposed to do is this. I'm supposed to take this guess button, okay, and take it outside of that particular function. So now it's not a locally scoped variable anymore. Okay. So now it's a global scope variable, which means you can access it everywhere. So refreshing this, and now I click on new game. Okay, let me first of all refresh again. New game, and then I click on guess. You can now see it's working perfectly fine. Button click. So I click on OK, that's what it's supposed to do. So new game, when I click on guess, you can see you get this message over here that the button has been clicked. Now, guys, I want you to see, and this is very important. Hands up, if you're doing anything, please, I want you to notice, to focus here. I want you to notice when we click on this guess button, the page is being refreshed. Okay, let me just remove this alert over here for you guys to see what I'm talking about. When I click on this guess button over here, okay, so when I click on this guess button, the page is being refreshed. As you guys can see that the page is being refreshed. The reason for this happening is because it is a button inside of a form. You can see we have a form over here, and that guess button is basically a button inside of a form. When a button is inside of a form, it is usually treated as a submit button. And whenever you submit a form, then that particular page usually refreshes. Okay? Again, when a button is inside of a form, it is treated as a submit button. And usually the behavior is when you submit a form, the page refreshes. And for now, that is going to be very problematic in our page because as you can see when the page refreshes, we end up losing everything. So there are two ways to fix this. You could fix this in two ways. You can set the type of the button to be equal to button. So type is equal to button like that. So you can set the type of button from the set because when it is inside of a form, by default it is a button. So you can set the type of the button to be equal to a button. And now in this case, when you refresh the page here, so new game, now when I click on the guess button, you can see it is not refreshing the page anymore. You can see it is not refreshing the page anymore. Or the second thing you could do is this. So let me remove this so that you guys see what I'm telling you to do. The second thing you could do, so for now, I remove that type is equals to button, which means when I click on new game, somebody can click, when I click on the guess button, you can see it still refresh. The second thing you should do is that in JavaScript, on that particular button, you prevent the default behavior of that particular button. And doing it is very simple. You can take this event object that we learned about today in the morning, and then you call event.prevent default. As simple as that. So this is an inbuilt method to prevent the default behavior of elements. So you prevent the default behavior of that particular element being a submit button, okay? And now it will not submit that particular form. That will the page will not refresh anymore. So now I can go back here and I refresh the page, okay? New game, and I click on the guess button. You now see it is not refreshing the page anymore. So those are the two ways you can fix that particular issue. So it's very important that you guys try to understand that. Okay, so that is it about it. So the first thing that I want us to do is this. I want us to read what the user has typed here. Okay, so let me just inspect so that we are able to see what that is the console. I want us to read what the user has typed, and for now, I just want us to load it in the console. So to read an input from an input element in JavaScript is very simple. You basically call that particular input dot value. But guess what, guys? You can see right now this input is inside of this function over here. So what does that mean? That means it is a locally scoped variable. We cannot use it outside of this particular function over here. If you don't believe me, I can try to call console.log input. So I've said if you want to read the value of an input, you use input.value, or rather the name of that particular input element. So you can see we're calling it input is equals to document.get element by ID, and then I'm calling .value. So if I save this and I try to log this to the console, let me just refresh this. So new game, and I can type here 55, and when I click on guess, you see actually I'm getting an error input is not defined. And why is that? It is because this input over here is a local variable. It is a locally scoped variable because it is inside of this function. It is a locally scoped variable. So I need to make it a global variable for me to be able to use it whenever I want to, or I define it inside of this specific function over here. So for now, the former solution is the best to make it a global variable. So cut this from here, and then also make that to be a global variable. And now, when I try to console.log the input.value, I should be able to get exactly what I want. So refresh this, new game, and if I type 55 and I click on guess, you can now see I'm able to get this 55 over here. And that is working perfectly fine, okay? So if I type 55, you can see I'm able to get the value 55 over here. Okay, so that is not enough. When the user presses yes over here, we want to compare this value with a certain secret number. Okay, so we can have a variable here for now called secret number. So const secret number, and for now we'll just have call this number. We can give it a value like, let's say 55. Okay, not even 55. Let's say something like 60. So for now we are calling this secret number to be equal to 60. So now I want to check if the guess of the user is greater than this secret number, or if it's less than the secret number, or if it is equal to the secret number. Of which, depending on whatever the result is, I want to show the user the result in this game dice over here, this game result element over here, this element. So this is very simple. I will start by saving this one over here into a variable. So I'll just say here, let me remove this too. So const player guess is equal to the input value, of which input is this element. As you can see, is this document of get element by id game input. Okay, so if you have called it, let's say game input and game input value. So I don't want to get the program, just know we are getting whatever input is value. So there are three cases here. The first case is when the player guess is equal to what the user, is equal to the secret number. Okay, so if the player gives us a number that is equal to this secret number that we have, okay, it means the user has won the game. So you can just say here for now, user has won. The second condition is when the player guess is greater than the secret number, okay, of which in this case we want to show too high. And the third condition here is when the guess of that particular player is less than the secret number, in which case we want to show here too low. Very simple and very straightforward. So if the guess of the user is equal to the secret number, the user has won. Or the player, the user, whatever you want to do is 100% okay. If the guess of the player is greater than the secret number, we want to show them that it's given us something that is too high. If the guess of the player is less than the secret number, we want to show them that it's given us something that is too low. And where are we showing that message? We are showing it in this guess button element. Sorry, not that, but this game result element. So let us copy this, and then first of all select the element. Remember we said if you want to use an element, you must first of all select it. So you can say here, const result box is equal to document.query selector of that particular game result. So you can see I'm using query selector. So I need to specify whether this is a class or whether it is what it is. So let me just remove those and get rid of that. So document.query selector of this result. Okay, and now I want to check if the player guess is equal to the secret number. Then you can say that guess box. So the guess box, sorry, the result box. So the result box dot text content is equal to, sorry, not is equal to like that one, is equal to you win. Okay, if it is too high, then the result box dot text content is equal to too high, or we actually want to show that particular number, so what the user has guessed. For example, if it is 90, we want to show 90 is too high, so we need here template pictures. So you can say here player guess. Where is that? So the player gets here is too high. Otherwise, you want to show here the result box dot text content is equal to whatever this gets here. So the player gets is too low. So save that. And now if we go back here, so refreshing this new game. So remember the secret number is 60. So if I type 60 and I hit on guess, you will see it is not working. Okay, so I was doing this intentionally because there is something I wanted to tell you. So whenever you read input from an HTML input element, by default it's usually a string. So by default it's usually a string. If I try to log here to the console, so console.log type of player guess. If I also log the type of player guess, so save this, allow me to refresh, and then new game. So inspect, so too much processes there. If I type here, for example, 55, and I hit on guess, you can see the type of that particular input is a string. So by default, not even by default, whenever you are reading anything from an HTML input, it's usually of a strict data type. So you need to convert it to a number data type because you can see here, we are using the strict equality operator. We're using the strict equality operator, and even this equality operators, they will fail when trying to compare a number in a string. So we need to convert this input value over here into a number, of which in JavaScript we have a function called number, which will convert an input into a number, or which will convert a string into a number. So now we're converting this input value, which is a string, into a number. So if I save this now, and I go back here, refresh this, new game. So if I now try 60 and hit guess, you can see we get here you win. Okay. New game. So the secret number is 60. If I try 90 and I hit guess, you can see I get here 90 is too high. And let me just refresh this new game. If I try something like 45, of which 45 is too low, and I hit guess, you see here I'm getting 45 is too low. So our game is working exactly as we wanted it to. Okay. Now we don't just want to show here the text content is equal to you win and all of that. We also want to style this result box. So when you win, we want the class list here to be equal to this class list. Where is that? CSS. Here it is. So when you win, we want to add this victory class list. So you can just say here result box dot class list dot add, and the class that you want to add here is the victory class. You can see that adding the class as a string. So save this, and we try to check that new game 60 years, and you can see there you win. Are we supposed to show the scores? I think we are showing the scores here. Let us go with halves here. So 50 is too high. 25 too high. 12 too low. 12 and 25 maybe 20 too low. 20 and 25 maybe 23. Yeah, you win, and then your score is 60%. Yeah, so we are also supposed to show the score. We will come back to that. So the exact box equals to the win, and then we will also show the score here. Now, if you lose, sorry, if you lose here, the result box with text content is equal to too high, and then we want to add this class here. We want to add the class of wrong high. So let us add that class. Result box dot class list dot add wrong high, and of course it goes without saying for this one over here, result box dot class list dot add, we will add the class of wrong low. So save that, and now if we go back here and we refresh the page, okay, so new game, our secret numbers we know by now is 60. If we type 90, you see 90 is too high, you get it in red. If we type 7, which is too low, you see 7 is too low, you get it in orange. Now if we type 90 again, you now see we get 90 is too high, but now it is in orange. Because the previous class is still there, and because it is coming the last in our HTML, this wrong row is the one that is coming the last in our HTML, So before we add a new class, we want to remove the previous class. Okay. So you can say here, result box dot class list dot remove. We should remove the wrong low class, and then here we want to remove the wrong high class. Result box dot class list dot remove the wrong high class, so that you don't have that confusion between the classes of these colors over here. So refreshing this now, new game. If we try 90 here, we hit guess, you can see 90 is too high and it's in red. If we try 9, which is too low, it's too low and it's in red. If we try 99, it's too high and you can see everything is working exactly as we wanted. And then we are supposed to punish the user. When they give us a number that doesn't make sense, we want to punish them by deducting the number of trials remaining. But right now, as you can see, the number of trials is a local variable here. It's a locally scoped variable. So it means we cannot access it outside of this function. So for us to be able to access it outside of this function, we should make it a global scope variable. So I'm going to remove it from here, and then also reduce these spaces, and then make it a global variable. So somewhere there, the number of trials is equal to 10. And also, on top of that, okay, this trials count box is where we want to show the number of trials remaining. And you can also see it is also a locally scoped variable. So I want to make it a global variable. So I'm going to remove it from here, okay, because it is a locally scoped variable. If we try to use it when it is inside of another function from another function, we will get an issue. So here you want to reduce the number of trials. So you can see here number of trials minus equals to 1. So that is equals to say number of trials is equals to number of trials minus 1. And then the trials count box. Trials count box dot text content is equals to so the number of trials remaining. Okay, so the same thing here. So just a second, copy this, and then the number of trials remaining. So if I now save this and I go back here to the page, so refresh, okay, yeah, refresh that. So new game, and we know the secret number is 60, and I'm going to try 89. Yes, you can see 9 trials remaining. We keep going 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, and 2, and we can keep going. So if somebody gets to 0, it means they lose the game, which means they need to check for that as well. But for now, as you can see, we're able to reduce the number of trials in case the player misses the secret number. Okay. So let us see what happens when we fail. When we get to 0, new game, and if I try something like 67, too high. So 3, 2, 1. So when we get to 0, we show the user here you lose. The number was whatever that number is. So here in this case, we want to do the same thing. We deduct the number of trials, and if the number of trials has fallen to 0, okay, if the number of trials has fallen to 0, then the trials count box is supposed to show something else. Okay, so the trials count box is supposed to be equal to you lose the secret number was, and then you show here the secret number. Otherwise, if that is not the case, we want to show them this. We want to show them you have this number of trials remaining, and it is the same logic for when we are wrong in the high dimension. It is the same logic. I think you guys already know what you're supposed to do there. We're coming to discuss that in a short while. You can see we have very similar logic here. We reduce the number of trials with 1. Okay, very similar logic. We reduce the number of trials by 1. Okay, and then we check if the number of trials has fallen to 0. We show the trials count box or text content is equal to you lose the number of the secret number of slash. Otherwise, we show the number of trials remaining. Same thing to this one over here. We reduce the number of trials by 1, and if it has fallen to 0, we are supposed to do the necessary. So let me save this first of all and check whether it is working. So refresh that, new game, and our secret number is 60. If we try 78, which is in the top direction, too high, too high, too high. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then 0 trials remaining, and you can see the user loses, and now the secret number is 16. Okay. So if you also try that in the load direction, new game, and then you try it with 1, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and you can see we end up using the secret number was 60. Now, as you can see here, these logics over here, they are awfully similar. Okay, and in programming, we have one rule in programming. That rule is the dry rule, like B and Y. Okay, B and Y, the dry rule. Do not repeat yourself or don't repeat yourself. But as you can see here, we are repeating ourselves, and that's a very bad thing. And one of the ways we can avoid repeating ourselves is through functions. So you can see these logics over here, they're very similar. Okay. So I can create a function which is basically a block of code that does something specific to have that. And then instead of having this logic being repeated here, I only call that particular function whenever I need it. Okay. So we can now have a function here. We can have a function called check, win, or lose, something like that. So check, win, or lose, and then we have our logic inside of that particular function. So cut that out and paste it here. Okay, and now instead of repeating ourselves, we just call our function. And you can see that is very nice. Okay, we call our function here, check, win, or lose. Same thing to this one over here. We call check, win, or lose. And check, win, or lose doesn't make any sense because we're already checking the winning or losing. What can we call this function? Punish player or something? Because we're actually punishing the player. Okay, or we can even call it check end game. Okay, we can call it check end game. Okay, I really like that name. Check end game. Okay, so if the user fails, we want to check the ending of the game, and I believe that is going to work. If we refresh this and then we start a new game, so our secret number is 16. We try 19, guessing and guessing and guessing and guessing and guessing. You see, when we get to 0, you get here, you lose. The secret number was 60. Refreshing this and starting a new game, we can try here with 4, guessing and guessing and guessing and guessing, and when we get to 1 and 0, you can see we lose. The secret number was 16, and that is working perfectly fine. Okay. Now, what is left to do is this: when the user loses, we want to disable this input over here. We don't want them to be able to continue typing. Okay, because you can see here that the user has lost, but they can continue typing and continue guessing. And this doesn't make any sense. Okay, so when the user loses, we want to disable this input. We want to make it to be a read-only input and to disable the guess button. But thankfully, we have, okay, let me first of all format this code with feature, guys. It's looking so awful. So git bash, just a second, guys. Allow me to just format this code with feature, and my machine is really high right now. So feature flaglets the entire directory. And now, this is it. If the number of jobs is fallen to 0, it means this person has lost. Okay? So the only thing now I'm supposed to do is to disable the input or make the input read-only. So you can say here, game input. What did we call it? It was input. Okay? So input dot set attribute. And that attribute here is read-only. Okay, you want to set the read-only attribute. And even for the guess button, so the guess button dot set attribute, we want to make it a disabled button. That way, if you fail, we make the input to be read only, you cannot continue typing, and disable the button, you cannot continue guessing. Let's see if that is going to work. So refreshing the page, new game. So if we try here 67, yes, and when we get to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0, oh, sorry, we're supposed to set here read only true, and then disabled true. Sorry for that. For new game, and then if we try 78, which is too high, let's see if this is going to work. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and at 0 you can see the yes button becomes disabled. When you So let us refresh that. So new game, and then you can play the game. So if you try something like 34, and then yes, 4, 3, 2, 1, and at 0, you can see it becomes disabled. So two more things to do. The first one is that when there is a current game, when there is a game going on, this button over here should be disabled. Okay, so the new game button should be disabled. So that's supposed to be done here. So the new game button should be disabled. New game button dot set attribute, and that attribute is the disabled attribute set to true. So when the game is starting out, okay, when the game is starting out here, so new game, yeah, the game button should be disabled. But when the user loses, okay, when the user loses or wins, we want to disable that button so that they can be able to click on new game and play another game. So here when they lose, luckily we have a function. So imagine if we didn't have a function, we'll be doing it here and here, doing it here and here, it would be just so boring. So you can say here, the new game button, okay, dot set attribute disabled. Okay, so not set attribute, but to remove attribute. So to remove attribute, remove attribute. And that attribute is the disabled attribute. So save that. Now if we come back here and refresh it, new game, try here with something like 79. Yes. So 3, 2, 1, and at 0, you see the new game button is enabled, and then this yes button over here is disabled. So if we try another new game here, where we go on the go, we guess and guess and guess and guess and guess. You can see when you get to 0, it's also happening the same way. And even when you win, it's supposed to be the same thing. Okay, even when you win at 60, it's supposed to be the same. It's supposed to be the same thing. We are supposed to disable this input. Okay, we're supposed to disable the input, disable the guess button, and enable this button over here. So you can see we're supposed to do the same three things over here when you win as well. So these three things, where is that? When you win. And again, as you can see there, we're repeating ourselves, which is not a good thing. So also when you win, new game, and then we try something like 60, and then when we win, you can now see that it's working perfectly fine. Okay, that is working perfectly fine. Now, because I don't want us to repeat ourselves, I want us to have a function that will basically be able to do this. Okay, I'm going to call that particular function something like reset controls. Function reset controls. Okay, and it's going to do these three things. It's going to set the input to be read only. It's going to set the yes button to be disabled and the new game button to be enabled. So instead of repeating ourselves, we just be calling the function here reset controls. Reset controls, and even here we have our function called reset controls. Reset controls. So save that. And if we go back here to our page, refreshing this new game, so 55 is when you get to 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 at 0, you see the controls have been reset. And then another new game, if we try at a lower end, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, the inputs, the controls have been reset. You can say I can't type, I can't click on this. And same thing here, new game. And if I win by typing the correct number, you see the controls have been reset. And guess what? We don't even have to refresh the page now. We can click on new game. But here is the problem. When you click on new game and you're coming from a previous game, you can see on initial page load, new game was fine. But coming from a previous game, okay, when you're coming from a previous game, let's say I type here 60 and I win. Okay, when you click new game coming from a previous game, you can see you're coming with the items from the previous game. So you also need a way to reset all of these things over here when somebody clicks on the new game button. Okay, so here, sorry, what are we supposed to start by doing? So that particular input is okay. And then this input over here, we want to remove this value. When somebody clicks on new game, we want to remove this value, just in case there's a value there. So you can say here, input dot value is equal to an empty string. So that will will remove the value in case we have any value. And then this input, this element over here, we also want to remove all the text content. Okay, that element is the, where is that? That element is called what? Trials count box. No, not trials count box. The result box. So result box dot exit text content. Let's say text content. It's also equal to an empty string. So that we remove anything that is inside there. So new game, and if we win with 60, yes, you can see it's working. And now when we click on new game, you can see it's still working. So this is still not perfect because you can see we still have this green color, but we'll come back to that. So for now, if I type 60, yes, win, new game, we try 55, yes, 55 is too low, we have a bug, I know why that is the case. You also need to remove the classes of this result box. Okay, so result box, where is that result box? Dot class list, dot remove. So in case you're coming from a previous game with classes, for example, the wrong high classes, we want to remove it. The wrong low class, we want to remove it. And even the big class, we want to remove it. So like that. And now, if we refresh this and say here new game, we try with something like 60. We win, and then new game, we can now see this one. Okay, so 55, yes, and if we try here 60, yes, we win, new game, and you can see the start of 55. Okay, even the number of trials we need to set it to 10. The way we are done by the way, we're just doing some cleanup here. Number of trials is equal to 10 and start it out. So refresh this. New game, if we try 55, we lose. If we try 60, which is the actual number, we guess we win. And now on a new game, it's still not setting the number of trials to be equal to 10. But we will come back to that later on. Okay, actually, you're supposed to set it here at the top, not here at the top. So number of trials is equal to 10. That way, when you are reading it, that's fine. Okay, and now the final thing is to generate this secret number dynamically. Okay, the secret number that we want to work with, we want to generate it dynamically. So in JavaScript, let me show you something. In JavaScript, we have a function called mark.random. Mark.random. So this mark.random function, it gives you a random number between 0 and 1. So the mark.random function will give you a random number between 0 and 1 every time you call it. So for me, I wanted to give me a number between 0 and 100. So I will multiply this by 100 like that. So consider we are at 31, we are at 11, we are at 37, we are at 16, and so on and so forth. And then if I want to remove the decimal places, I'm supposed to have all of this inside of mark.trunk to remove the decimal places. Come again? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know you thought for something very complex, but you can see something very simple. So you can see when I call mark.trunk into brackets mark.random times 100, it will now be giving me a random number every time I call it. Okay? It's not giving me a random number every time I execute it. Some people say it's not truly random, but to me it looks random. So for most of people in mathematics and computer science, probably you know the reason why engineers don't really agree with a random number, but for me it looks random. So let me copy this, and then when the user clicks on a new game, now we want to set the secret number. You can see for now we are calling it. Okay, so you should just say here the secret number, and now you want to set the secret number actually. So you can now say here, secret number is equal to mark.trunk into bracket mark.random times 100. So now if we save this and we try to actually play the game now, by the way, the game now is done in that state. So new game. So I think let us start with 60. So let us see about cheating or anything. So 60 is too high. You can try 30. Too high. 20. too high as well. Maybe it's 10. 10 is too high. 5. 5 is too high. Wow. 3 too high. It's either 1 or 2. Yeah, 1. You can now see we win. But then we should also show the percentage. Okay. So if 100% is equal to 10, what about the number of choices remaining? For example, 4. So it's going to be 4 times the number of choices remaining divided by 10. So 0 by 0, which is basically the number of choices remaining times 10 to get the percentage. High school mathematics. So you win. The score is number of trials times 10 and then percent. To send that, and now I think that the game is done. We program the game completely. So new game, and now if we try, let's say something like 60 again. 60 is too low now. What about 90? 90 is too high. Between 60 and 90, maybe it's 70. Okay, not 700, 70. 70 is too low. Maybe it's 80. 80 is too high. Maybe it's 75. 75 is too high. 71. 71. 71 is too low. 71 to 75, maybe it's 73. Yeah, you win. Your score is 20%. Yeah, so that is it about it. The game is now adjusted, so you can click on new game to start a new one. Any questions? Okay. So I click OK. So try clicking too high, 825, too high, right, too low, 18, too low, 80, too low, too high, sorry, almost. I think it's there. So I'm going to see the number of times and how many percentages. After we are done, the rate is